why are you running for this seat?
That's a very good question. I think it's something a lot of the voters can kind of feel the same pain that I had. A couple years ago when the housing bubble and everything kind of started to crash, and all of a sudden my mortgage, I got a letter in the mail telling me that they reassessed my house at almost 150,000 more than it was actually ever valued at. And so I was really frustrated with the fact that they could manipulate how much my taxes were going to be during that time. And it was a really frustrating experience. And so throughout that year or two after that, I had to fight for a new price or new assessment on my house that I was just tired of talking about it in the Bibb County GOP meetings, talking with other people. I was just, instead of just talking about it, I felt like I needed to finally stand up and do something about it. And this was kind of a way in.
So you mentioned taxes, so I'm going to jump down here to tax reform, because I'm assuming that based on your issues with your property taxes, you'd like to see some tax reform.
Absolutely.
So what would your tax reform look like?
I mean, my first thing is, honestly, is to remove all type of property tax. I think once you've paid for something and you paid the tax that's the initial price on it, you should be able to own it for the rest of your life. It's no different than anything else you typically buy. Why is it every year you have to pay a new tax on your home and your property? After you've paid the full mortgage off, your agreement to the bank, a private entity, you still have to pay this charge every year to the government. For what purpose? You can't even retire, you know, now and without having to maintain this payment for the rest of your life. In
terms of property tax, if you know the government did away with that, how would they make up for that consumption?
Sure. I think that in terms of the property tax, that there are ways that you can cut a lot of government just spending in general. I mean, every year you continue to hear about new ways they're trying to generate revenue. Well, why? Because they keep building the government bigger and bigger every year. Well, I think in terms of those that actually keep up with the funding revenue generation, like for the property tax, you eliminate those kind of groups, and that would hopefully cut back some of that spending. But you know, if we start talking into other tax reforms such as income tax, which I think, you know, I think you should be able to keep whatever you earn without being taxed upon that either. You know, the government has to find a way. I think we're at a tipping point in terms of, you know, where everyone just kind of likes to say, oh, well, it's just the norm. Well, it's not the norm. We need to stop. And if we finally come together and say, well, enough's enough, we have to force them to finally say, okay, we've got to cut spending or we're going to go into debt. You know, until the people step up and actually force the government, that's my thing is I'm here to finally try and put a stop to this and force the government to stop the spending, to cut back, to allow me to own my own property, keep my money, you know, that kind of thing. In terms of other things for tax generation is maybe consumption style tax. At least in those ideas, you get to choose how you want to be taxed. Like when you want to go buy a TV or, you know, buy a car or whatnot, you at least get to choose. You're not held at gunpoint in a way of, you're going to be mandated to take my money every year from me because I own a house. Okay. Or even the car tax, honestly, you have to pay taxes every single year on that. But at least those ideas, they're choices of yours versus being forced.
Okay, well, going back a little bit to what you say on your website, it is interesting. You said you'd like to restore liberty and not restrict it. In your opinion, how do you feel the current leadership in Georgia has restricted some of our liberties?
You know, in general, I think taxes are a big piece of being restricted in our liberty. Anytime that you're forced to, mandated to do something like that, to give away money, I mean, they necessarily own your lifestyle. If they want to increase your taxes because of something, that they can do that. In terms, I think that the new gun bill has been pretty promising. That's been something that I was pretty happy with. That really kind of restored some liberties here for the Second Amendment. That's a pretty big deal to me.
So you were in full support of that gun bill?
I was. I definitely was.
Do you feel like there were any other ways maybe you would have been a little more restrictive with it or less restrictive?
No, I think that the biggest issue that people have with it is you hear that, well, now guns are going to be everywhere. They're going to be in restaurants, bars, churches, whatnot. The thing is that churches, it's an opt-in anyway, for one thing. It's not, they actually have to allow you to have it. But the difference is that I think people lose is that this is a private agreement in terms of these churches, restaurant, bar owners. It's a property rights issue, I think, because me as a property owner, if I own a business, it's my choice if I want to allow guns or not. It's not the government to dictate some rules on how I should run my business, who I can allow to come in and out of my business, if I want people to carry weapons in my business or not. If people don't like a certain restaurant because they're known for everyone carrying guns in there, you don't have to go to it. You voice your concern. I think, same thing with churches. If all of the patrons got up and said, we're not coming here because you allow guns, I'm sure that they'll probably change their way. That's the power of the voice, and I think that's really important to bring that back, that the government doesn't make the decisions. You as a voter, it's your freedom and your right to choose where you want to go, how you want to live, and not the government making these laws like that.
Well, you are in an interesting situation right here. You're challenging a very long-time incumbent in this seat. You seem to have a disposition about you where you want to make change for the people. So why not start at a smaller level? Why not maybe run for local office before taking on the state level?
Sure. It took a lot of thought. I think the biggest issue for me was the consolidation coming. What was going to happen with the redistricting and all of that. And I just feel at the state level that there's more issues that need to happen for statewide versus county level.
So how does your experience then, how will that help you? People don't maybe not even know who you are.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, why you feel you'd be a good fit for this position.
Sure. I feel like I'm just a regular guy that has a lot of the same concerns that all the other patrons, all the other people in this county, district, the state of Georgia, I think feel, we can bicker on certain things like gun rights or, other things, but in the end, I think everyone wants to own their house. Everyone wants to keep the money that they earn, and for myself, I just think logically. I'm an electrical engineer. I went and got my master's in electrical engineering. I have a mathematics minor. I just feel that logic it just makes sense to me. If what I earn, if what I make, I should be able to keep. What I purchase, I should never ever have to pay for again. It just makes sense to me, and I just feel that kind of thinking is what we need.
All right, going back to some of the big issues, education was a huge deal this year, talking about dropping the Common Core. That was a big talker in the House and Senate this year. How do you feel about that? Do you think the Common Core should remain in place, or would you get rid of it if
I would
elected?
absolutely get rid of it.
Why is that?
In a heartbeat. The Common Core, what I feel with Common Core is that it basically creates this standardization across all of the states. I understand the idea, what they were trying to do is that so one student here is taught something the same curriculum over here, but the problem is you can't standardize education in terms of the way kids learn. Everyone learns at a different level, speed, and the fact that teachers are mandated, they have to teach this type of curriculum, this type of mathematics, and you can't structure it to kids that might accelerate in a different way, thinking, okay, if I add it this way, 2 + 2 = this, versus this new type of mathematics they've kind of shown with this new string theory and all that, or I'm not even sure if it's called string theory, but it's like the string mathematics. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't allow for teachers to actually be super involved in the kids and how they develop and helping those that are a little slower in development. It's frustrating. I think kids get frustrated, especially in mathematics and sciences. And when kids get frustrated at such an early level, it turns them off as they get older. I think that's why, as the United States is starting to fall behind in that technology curve because of these type of standardizations. Kids aren't going out with these science degrees, engineering degrees, mathematics and whatnot, because we're making it so frustrating at a young age.
Kind of going off a little bit about science, the medical marijuana was also another hot topic this year at the State House. Now, the bill didn't make it past, so if you're elected, you could potentially vote on a bill like that this year. Would you vote on that? Would you support it? Would you write a bill like that? What's your opinion on the whole issue?
Sure. I think in terms of medical marijuana, my problem is why are the politicians even involved in the first place? This stems all the way from the federal level, but especially at the state level. This is like coming into your physician, between my physician and myself, and saying, okay, well, you can't have these kind of drugs when the doctor might know that this might work for you. And I think that you have to allow and legalize the aspects of any sort of medical care that a doctor will prescribe. That's why we go to the doctors. They're the smart ones. They're the ones that went to all the schooling, that know what works, what might work, and when you open it up, it allows for research groups to come in and see actually what works. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen the bill much broader, honestly. The thing is that what I see with the bill is it limited it to one type. That's like coming in, the politician saying, well, I'm sorry, but you and the doctor, it doesn't matter what he thinks. This is the only thing that you can prescribe. And I think that when you go down that, it's a very slippery slope when politicians start to get involved between a doctor and their patient.
So you'd be in favor of legalizing medical marijuana as a whole then, not just limiting it to an oil form?
Yeah, I think you legalize it in terms of just the medical aspect of it because, again, the doctors know best. I mean, that's what they're paid to do. That in the end, they're liable for our lives if something happens to us. If they prescribe the wrong medicine, I mean, they're liable, you know, if something happens to us. You know, and that's the thing is when a politician comes in and says you're only allowed one type, that's like saying, okay, well, you know, this brand of medicine is all we're going to allow in the state of Georgia, but there's one that's over here that really works way better, or if you know a certain pain prescription, you know, only 5 milligrams of this is all we allowed in Georgia, but you know we really need to tweak it for you because you really need some more, but the doctor can't because he's legally bound by some politician that doesn't even really know much about the drugs itself. So that's my concern anytime politicians get involved in any kind of medical issues.
All right, and wrapping it up, I just want to ask you quickly, you are going to be covering Monroe and Bibb County if you're elected. Aside from property taxes, which seem to be a big passion for you, what are some other local issues that you'd like to see addressed at the state level?
Sure. I mean, I think Common Core is really the biggest deal, especially in Middle Georgia. You hear a lot of issues with the public school system and whatnot, and I think that just stems from this type of standardization. Teachers don't have the ability to actually teach, you know, to do what they know is right to do. They're teaching to some form that is governed by some politician up, you know, in the federal government. That is now the state is fine. It's crazy that the state is finally starting to become aware of this issue when we've known about it for the last like 4 or 5 years, and we're just now finally starting to talk about it. Because teachers are getting upset, kids are frustrated, parents are frustrated. You know, kids are not, you know, following through with mathematics and science. I think that's like the biggest base here in Middle Georgia is education because, you know, that if you can't grow kids to be, you know, in the math and science industry, you know, they're going to fail. It's a tough road, you know, if you don't graduate college and high school and whatnot. It's just a tough thing.